It is a brand new edition of Flyers Daily, a Monday edition of Flyers Daily. Everybody knows what that means. Flyers Daily is brought to you by Ticketmaster, Make More Memories Live. That's not what it means. It means that Bill Meltzer's joining us for his Monday edition. In the press box still after Flyers Utah. Bill, we sat here last week for this Monday episode, and we were really lauding a really good week of Flyers hockey, a very busy week of Flyers hockey too. But this week's been a very frustrating one. It just kind of tells you that, for a team that is not a finished product or close to it, there's going to be this treadmill effect sometimes of moving forward and not really going anywhere.
There certainly is and will be. I think the most frustrating part, Jason, is that these were 3 winnable games.
Yep.
Two where the Flyers couldn't close it out, and then this game where just wasn't a ton of energy going on for either side, really for much of the hockey game. But there were enough almost plays. You get it tied. There were just you lose the goal in a goalie interference, which is a frustrating play. I do think that John Tortorella was correct. He had no beef with it because that's a pretty straightforward rule. I know it stinks when there's incidental contact in the paint, but when a guy skates in there himself and there's any kind of contact at all, the rule says no goal. So it was the right ruling.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a couple go the Flyers' way that they've challenged this year. Like, for example, when Matthew Tkachuk goes behind the Flyers' goaltender, and which usually you see goal interference from the front side. That was actually from behind, but I had no problem with that goal not counting based on what we've seen this year, and I'm still not totally sure what goalie interference is, despite all of that. I think the thing, Bill, for me, sticking with the Utah game in particular, it looked like the body language wise, like a team that their whole body language didn't look confident to me in the game. It looked tired and not confident. Did you kind of get that read as well?
I thought so. Yeah, I thought 3 of the 4 lines were not going. Mm-hmm. If you notice in the third period, there was a little bit of line shakeup. They moved Tyson Forster up to the Couturier line. They moved Farabee, even though he had the goal. They moved him to Noah Cates' line, just trying to maybe create a spark somewhere. It was really the line with Michkov and Tippett and Frost. That was the line that was going tonight. There really wasn't much other than a number of almost plays, as John Tortorella calls them, and I think that's an apt description because you make that initial pass, you don't make the second one. You have a guy going to the net, but the shot misses in there, or the pass is errant, or just a little bit off. They were just a little bit off in this game, and honestly, I didn't think Utah was really any better. I mean, Utah played the night before too, and it was just one of those games. Yeah,
and Utah's on the grind of this road trip out of their time zone, and they played in Buffalo on Saturday, and then turn around right to play the Flyers on Sunday. They both got in. I think they missed each other by 15 minutes at the airport when they got into Philadelphia, from what I was told. So there's no great advantage on either side in this back-to-back. I just thought that I'm not sure if it was an effect of blowing 2 games. They played 3 and 4. I get it, but I just never felt like there was any jump in this game. Konecny comes into the game, Bill. Obviously, he went into concussion protocol, into the quiet room, served his time there, and was cleared. Got back to the bench, I think, late in the third period, and didn't see the ice in overtime. John Tortorella made it really clear that when he came back, he wasn't playing him, too undisciplined. He played him quite a bit in this game. It didn't carry over. He led the Flyers in ice time with just under 24 minutes of ice time. What did you think of the answer from Konecny after being essentially benched after getting out of concussion protocol?
Well, I first of all, I think he understood what happened, and that there wasn't going to be any kind of a carryover to it. Honestly, I'd like Konecny on the ice in a 3-on-3 with a point that you need at stake. Honestly, I thought that sitting him the remainder of regulation wasn't
Wasn't enough.
personally.
Punitive enough. Yeah, that's
personally.
where I would have felt too.
Because he could win you a game in overtime, and he has won them games in overtime. The Flyers really are fighting for every point they could get. So I really would have liked to have seen them in the OT, and 90 seconds of the OT was spent at 4-on-4 too.
Yeah,
because
Couturier started out in the box.
Right, for just 3 seconds though.
Yep.
So it wasn't until a minute and a half into the period that you went to 3-on-3. I would have liked to have seen Konecny get at least a shift in overtime. Maybe he can win it for you.
I'd have called him into the coach's office after the game and said, "You sat the rest of that third period. I don't care if you would have got back in 2 minutes or 15 minutes.
Right,
you weren't playing the rest of that period." But I tell him, I say, "All right, are you done? Are you going to learn from this? Now go out and win me a game.
Go and win the game. Get the point that we need." I agree with you completely. The other thing too that I thought in the OT, which I thought was interesting because the head coach a couple days earlier, and he was really talking about the league in general, although in addition to his own team, but he was talking about how in 3-on-3, nobody could do. There's not a lot of guys who can play the man-to-man defense that's required in it, and the guys kind of seem lost with that open ice on the defensive side of things. I personally think that when you have a 3-on-3, I always want to have a center, a natural center on the ice.
Yep. You had Forster and Tippett out there.
And Tippett really had a real.
Yeah. Tippett lost the battle against Pasternak, but I don't know what Forster's doing going to Pasternak.
Right. Correct. And it showed that. And I'm not saying that if you would have had a center out there, whether it's if you don't want to have Frost out there, fine. Hailing or Cates, or whatever the case might be. Couturier just had a shift before that, so this was, but I don't know. I don't want to get beaten at 3-on-3 without a defense, without a guy that could battle in a one-on-one situation. It just
a guy that's used to defending below the dots.
The guy used to defending below the dots. That's especially because Southerners have to cover so much real estate defensively.
Yep.
So that's a decision where if it works out, it looks great. You can look at the other 3-on-3. The last one Flyers won, where you have Konecny batting the puck ahead, and Michkov grabs it for a breakaway, and he goes and he scores, and you win.
Yeah.
That's a situation where you had 2 wingers on the ice, and it worked for you.
But you started with the center there, though, too.
You got possession. Correct. Yeah. So you had the possession. He was out for the faceoff.
Yep.
So that's I don't know. I just think that I never like getting caught without a centerman on the ice. So that's that's a risk that just didn't pay off in the situation. But where I thought that kind of balanced off a little bit is in the last 2 games. You can go back to the Florida game, and you had Michkov and Tippett connected for 2 goals in the span of about 24 seconds or something.
Yeah,
like that?
23
seconds. The line was rolling, but the game is tied. You go ahead a goal. You didn't see him in the third period, and you didn't see him because of the concern about the defensive standpoint. Right, you're trying to close the game out. Same thing in Boston too. The line really was not used very much after the second period. And I understand you're going with a 2-goal lead. You're trying to close it out, but it backfired a little bit, Jason, because your fourth line gets scored on.
Yeah.
Your third line got scored on too.
Yep.
As far as some of those penalty calls, they were marginal.
The Hathaway one is the one I like.
The Hathaway one. It's funny, like the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame referee Paul Stewart is a family friend. So I talked to Stewie after the game, and he actually happened to be watching because Stewie's from Boston and actually was watching the game. And he explained to me how that call happened, and it made a ton of sense.
Yeah.
First of all, it was the trailing ref that made the call.
Yeah.
So he's back on the play, behind it. He sees, so he didn't have a good vantage point.
Yeah, he sees the tail whip of the stick.
Which is right. You saw the stick get extended, and which is kind of asking for trouble, but it was really there wasn't with a better vantage point, he would have seen that wasn't a penalty.
Yeah.
But he saw the stick go out, right? He hears the crowd reaction.
Yep.
And he knows it's Hathaway, who's a heavily penalized player. So there's a little bit of reputation in there too.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes a bad call.
Yep.
And that's how something like that happens. As Stewie says, positioning sells calls. It was a ref in a bad position who made a bad call.
Yeah.
When that happens, that's really frustrating. But that's how something like that unfortunately happens sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I look at that Boston game and I go, okay, you're up 3-1. Yeah. The way to close out a game, even more so for a team that's still playing forward, because they give up the goal to Marchand because they're pinching and they're still being aggressive offensively, but they're not using the personnel that can maybe take advantage of that. Because the best way to close out that game is to go up 4-1.
Correct.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Especially for a team that presses forward.
For sure. And I thought you had guys that were – you already had – 2 goals in the game and whatever.
Yeah. A lot of confidence in those guys.
And they had the puck a lot, that line.
Yep.
I'd rather be attacking.
Yeah.
If the philosophy is safe as death, then I want safe – I want that to carry through.
Yeah, I mean, and you see they're not playing safe because Cam York's pinching down the wall. Sanheim was pretty low in the zone at that point as well. Forster covers it not well enough. He doesn't read it well enough to get beyond where Marchand is, and Marchand tucks it on Kolosov for the goal. But, yeah, I mean, if you're going to keep pressing, then keep the offensive players in that, especially the ones that are going in that game. It's something I'm going to have to ask Storts about this week in Hockey and Hounds. What did you think of the return of Jamie Drysdale?
I thought it was
really rusty in the beginning.
Yeah, he looked very rusty at the beginning. He didn't look comfortable under forechecking pressure.
Mm-hmm.
He
got walloped in the third.
He sure did. Did. I thought that I thought he settled in a little bit as the game went along. I thought he made a couple decisions, or one where I would have liked to see him shoot. One where he was kind of skating downhill into a play, and rather than shooting, he attempted a pass.
Yep.
And he had a shooting lane. The disallowed goal was unfortunate for him. It might have been, it was nice to see him jump into a play, jump into the top of the circle, and fire one into the net. That the interference of that had nothing to do with him. But it was I guess it was good to get him back into the lineup. It's something he's going to have to build on. He's going to have to be better on both sides of the puck, as far as I'm concerned, compared to how he's played this season, and even portions of last year. Apart from the injury, I mean, he's a player who's very much still has to prove himself.
Yeah. And Bill, where do you think his head's at right now? Because he goes out for a long period of time, a lot longer than we thought he was going to be out.
Yes. And
since he comes out, Helgi Grans comes up and gets accolades, public accolades from coaches, GMs, and deservedly so.
Yeah.
Emil Andre has come up and really grabbed
he's not going down. He's not going down. So
yeah, he's never going back. He's like Fleetwood Mac. I'm never going back. And that puts a bit of pressure on a guy like Drysdale, who, I mean, his biggest problem has been his lack of availability.
Yeah.
He's got this skill, he's got this skating ability, but A, can you stay available? And B, can you pull it all together? Like seemingly, especially Andre has. And that puts a pressure on him, I think so.
No, it definitely does. It definitely does. And, there's this, I mean, competition is a good thing, but it's also how do you respond to that competition? I mean, you're hoping it brings out the best in him.
Yeah.
But it means that nothing's going to be handed to him. He's going to have to earn his time.
Yeah. Now that Ersson is back, I thought it was kind of just a ho-hum game for Ersson. I didn't think he was great in the game. I didn't think he was bad in the game. And I think when coming back from a groin injury, that's probably the kind of game you want.
Yeah.
You don't test the hell out of it, and you start to build up confidence that it's not going to re-exacerbate. But now that he's back, Bill, and if he can, over a week's time, stay healthy, you're going to have to make a decision on this goaltending three-headed monster. I thought it was pretty telling that Fedotov got pulled after a period, and
Yeah.
then they went back to Kolosov on Saturday.
Yeah.
Is that telling enough that Fedotov's going to be the one sent down and have to clear through waivers?
And Kolosov is also back to Ersson. And so it means if Sam tweaks something or just gives up a 3 spot or something, that means, in the first period or whatever, I mean, that means Kolosov's back in, right?
Yeah.
So, I think if you're trying to handicap this right now, I would say that the internal view is that Kolosov is the one winning the race so far in the roster depth battle, right? I think right now,
read between the lines, isn't it?
Yeah,
they're not saying that, but if you read between the lines, I think
right.
Yeah,
I think it's all I mean the fact that Fedotov was pulled after one period too shows that
giving up 2.
Those were not good goals. They're not very competitive goals.
Exactly.
So I think that weighed into that decision. If you give up let's put it this way, Jason. If one was a snipe and one's a deflection goal, I don't think he's out of there after one period.
Yeah,
right?
Torch said he pulled him. He just didn't look like he had it.
Sharp, and he was right. He was right.
Yep, totally agree. We'll see if when he gets back. It'll be interesting to see how they handle this week with Ersson back. How much do you ride him in this situation? You get Columbus on Tuesday, then you come back home to take on Detroit Thursday, and then you get Minnesota at 2:00 Saturday afternoon out there, and then you've got a couple of days off because you don't play again till Wednesday. So theoretically, you could play Ersson all 3 of these games. I think Kolosov will get one. I just don't know which one.
I don't think they'll rush Sam into playing. So I think it'll be a 2-1 split. I think. Yeah. And which one we'll see. I think you roll with Ersson on Tuesday, and then you kind of see how it goes from there.
Bill, one thing that even though they scored back-to-back power play goals on Thursday and Saturday for the first time since late October in back-to-back games, I'm still incredibly frustrated with the powerless power play because there's just no predictability to it in the sense that it's going to be something that, gives you momentum or gives you some production.
Yeah.
This is a team that needs that production at a higher clip. Yeah, they got off to a good start this season, but they really lagged behind in that now. I don't know where you go from here. I see the talent that they put on the ice. I see Travis Konecny as a point-per-game player in the NHL. Yeah. Michkov is damn close to that already, and we know how he operates in space and the amount of tension that he commands out there. Emil Andre, I look at the pieces and I'm going, this is not a power play that should be clicking at 16%. It's got to be at 19 to 21% minimum.
They had 8 power play goals through the first 8 games of the season, 8 for 33.
Yep,
about 25%. Nobody expected them to sustain that all year, but certainly if you get 18%. Right, yep. Jason. After that, the Flyers going into 2 games where the Flyers are at 9.3% since game 8. Game 8. I mean, obviously, that's not going to get it done. You look at the first 8 games, and those 8 power play goals. Morgan Frost had assists on 4 of those 8 power play goals. He doesn't have a power play point since then.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just. I'm so over talking about it. You know what I mean? Let's just get this thing figured out. And it seems like zone entries are different every time.
Yeah.
And you have to have some predictability in how you're going to get. I think you want the unpredictability once you get set up, but you need the predictability to get in and get set up.
Correct. Yeah.
That's what's driving me bananas.
Yeah. Yeah, whether you're kind of wedging through or a cross corner dump and somebody, but there's some kind of a method to it, a way of getting into the zone, and there doesn't seem to be a real plan for entry.
Yeah,
they're fine if they win the first faceoff and get set up. Now, not necessarily score, but they usually have good puck movement, even though they're not generating a great chance out of it. A lot of times, also guys are still passing up, I think, open looks too often.
Agree. Totally agree.
But if you don't win that draw and it gets clear down the ice and you have to go back to your own end and go back up ice and gain an entry and get set up, That's a problem because they struggle to do that.
I remember. I mean, one of the things that guys that I coached with, and I coached, the plan was if they weren't doing the entry right to get in and get set up. I mean, guys, this is something we work on in practice, just getting in and get set up.
Yeah,
like we can't screw this part of it up. Let's get in the zone, get set up, and then see. Then it becomes a game of, okay, what are they giving us? What are they taking away?
Right.
You know, you look at a team like Thursday in Florida who has 6 or 7 shorthanded goals already. I go, okay, I know that they're going to press high very hard because if they have 6 shorthanded goals at this point in the season, they're causing turnovers high in the zone. Right. So I'm going, okay, so I'm going to work on them from a low to high situation, either out of the corner or behind the net in that manner, because that mitigates their pressure high to do what they like to do. And I just, I'm just baffled that we're still having this conversation 3 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just too much talent to be this meek, maybe is the right word, on the power play.
Well, you have, you have situations too where you have a guy, and I'm talking about I just mentioned the Drysdale, although that wasn't on the power play. You'll have a guy with room to skate into the circle, skating downhill, has a look at the net, shoot it there. Sometimes and
take a smart shot that's going to develop a rebound or some traffic.
Exactly. But too often it'll miss the net, it'll rim out, and you just clear for the other team.
Yeah, so. And now you're starting with a zone entry again. For goodness' sake, it's maddening at this point. I don't know where they go with it, but I mean, to me, the setup would be get in the zone and get it to Mishkov on the half wall or shallow point. Right. He likes to kind of migrate out high. And he loves to cross the high part of the net. Yeah. I think it just opens up his vision. And if there's one thing I've seen all year, he's got the best vision on the team and great puck control and possession ability. Like, I got to get in the zone and I got to run it through him. I don't care that he's – happy birthday, Matvey. Today's his birthday, by the way. He turned 20. But I don't care. I have to run it through him. I have to treat it like I treated it when Giroux was here and the power play was decent. Everything – you get in, you get set up. You get it to Giroux, and then you go from there. He'll determine whether we're going low to high to low, point shot, crash, what we're doing.
Well, one thing the Flyers were doing, I thought, effectively in the first 8 games, if you go back and watch some of those plays, now on the unit then it was Frost and Michkov, but you could do it with Brink too. One of them's on the half wall. Michkov was usually at the goal line, but they would switch.
Yeah, they'd flip.
They just flip it, and it was very effective. But for the Flyers have gotten away from that for whatever reason.
Michkov would switch down low and then get the one-timer and fire it, and he scored one of the goals on, I think, Allmark that way as well. Not the overtime winner. But, I mean, the thing is you know how I feel, Bill. Every time you put the opposition team defending on the PK to a decision, they have a chance to make the wrong decision, and that's when you capitalize. But you got to put them to decisions. And static and teams that aren't moving on the power. I just want to be done talking about it and have it just. I'm not asking for it to click at 22-24%. I just want something that I can rely on.
No. Well, I think we should also bring up that the Flyers are a little bit of a PK funk right now.
They are.
Now Florida's a team that will put a team in a PK funk.
Yeah, and one of those was an empty netter power play.
One of them was an empty netter, but still, you give up 4 on 5 opportunities or 3 of them on 4. Yeah. That's gonna. I mean, the Flyers still and it shows how good the PK had been. The Flyers are still over 80% coming into the Utah game, but.
They were 3rd last week when we did this. Now they're 11th.
They're 11th. Yeah. Well, yeah. That Florida game is gonna. It's going to knock a team's numbers, but they've given up at least one in too many games in a row right now. They'll be fine. You know that's a team strength. In the Utah game, the Flyers had a pretty good shorthanded scoring opportunity. They continue to have those. Last year the Flyers were scoring shorthanded goals like clockwork. It felt like they had 3 in one game in Dallas. They're not going in. Yeah. But the PK is one of the last things I worry about. But if you're not scoring, if you're not scoring on the power play, then you got to kill your own penalties. And so they're taking too many of them, and they're not killing off enough of them lately.
Yeah, I mean the one goal that Utah scores. Lutton's got the great chance on the PK.
Yeah.
And then he's got to go the full 200 feet, and he can't get inside positioning on I think it was Keller.
Yeah.
Cooley. And Cooley goes in and pulls
Cooley.
the string to the backhand, and that's the game-winning goal. That's the 3-2 goal that they score on the power play off the rush. So that's kind of how it played out in that situation. Well, we'll see how it goes this week, Bill. It'll be another busy week of Flyers hockey. We'll crank it up. Not a lot of home games this month, but we'll have one coming up on Thursday with Detroit. So we'll reconvene next week as well. Everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Read Bill's work at PhiladelphiaFlyers.com and NHL.com. And we'll talk to you tomorrow on a brand new Flyers Daily.